feeding. This doesn't look like much, but it's actually called trout chow, just like your dog chow or cat chow. It's specifically manufactured for fishes and especially for trout. And what it does is float on the surface and gets the trout really excited. So I'm going to throw some food in and we're going to watch them fly. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but in the meantime, I'll just start talking. We have in this exhibit various types of trout. We have the free trout that you can find in Virginia, rainbow trout, brown trout, and brook trout. And brook trout are actually our state fish, and they're the only trout native to Virginia. These guys come from a hatchery outside of Charlottesville. If you've ever been there, it's called Montebello Fish Hatchery. Really cool place to go to see. The other trout in here are, we've got brown trout, which were introduced a long time ago, and rainbow trout, which were also introduced as sport fish. So as you can see, they get quite excited for the food. They would naturally eat little inverts and bugs that fall up into the water, and fall onto the surface. Just like the idea of fly fishing. When you go fly fishing, your fly kind of sits on the top of the water and then they get excited for it. Got a question?
Yeah, so Debbie Smith asks, how big will those trout get?
So in the wild, they wouldn't get any bigger than this actually. But since they are in captivity, and they are raised by hatchery fishes, they're going to get significantly larger. We'll go down to the middle section in just a minute, and you'll see they get pretty big, close to 2 feet in length actually. And the brown trout get significantly larger, but wild stock trout do not get very big at all. Actually, this guy down here is about as big as they get. So it's only about 6 inches. All right, so if you guys are ready, let's follow me down to the other section. Along the way here, you can see our indoor habitarium with lots of live plants, blooming and stuff as it's ready for summer. We have our Mountain Cove habitarium, or exhibit rather, with lots of darters and dace. Our 2 hellbenders on exhibit here. And then this is our larger trout section. Now these guys are significantly larger, as you can see. I only have brown trout and a couple of rainbow trout in this exhibit. So I'm going to do the same thing, throw in some food, and they're going to get all excited. Got a question?
So Nasa Bryant asks, how many times do you feed them a day?
That's a great question, and it's actually a trick question because I don't feed them every day. I only feed them every other day. These guys are in colder water, so their metabolism is much lower. They don't need to eat nearly as much. So they get fed every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11 o'clock, and then on Sunday I'll give them an extra feeding. So what you're really seeing a lot is the brown trout. These guys are massive. And the thing about brown trout is they were introduced long ago, I want to say from the West, as a sport fish, and they've kind of been detrimental to the natural brook trout population. Brown trout will eat anything. They can eat other fish, invertebrates, frogs, crayfish, and sometimes each other if they were small enough to fit in their mouth. But they're really beautiful, really striking spots, really nice olive and brown color. Then you got your male versus female, and I don't think you can see in the video here, but your male trout will start to form a hooked jaw during breeding season when it's time for them to start fighting off each other and fighting for females. So female's going to have a little blunter face. Go ahead.
Pamela Doss asks, are trout freshwater fish?
They are freshwater fish. They are freshwater mountain stream fish. So they really need it to be cold, which is when you have colder water, you have a higher oxygen count. If you get it too warm, that oxygen is much lower and they can't really handle it.
Barbara King asks, besides humans, who are the predators on these trout?
Well, lots of stuff actually, but primarily bears. Bears are going to eat trout. Sometimes your mountain lion or your bobcat if they can catch it, but no other fish really are going to eat trout except as juveniles. The trout will eat each other. Alright, so I'm done with the trout feeding for now. If you have any questions, feel free to keep asking, but I'm going to switch gears over to our mountain lake where we have our muskie. So our muskie actually get fed live shiners every week, but we also supplement them with some larger stuff. These are what's called smelt. These are pretty husky looking smelt here. They're nice and fresh. So we've only got like 2, maybe 3 of our muskie that will eat off the toms. These guys are actually from the James River outside of Lynchburg, thanks to Fish and Wildlife Service for taking us out fishing for muskie. These guys are one of my favorites, but they eat really quickly. Muskie are ambush predators, so they just kind of sit really quietly and still, and when prey comes along, they will snag it and eat it. Let's see when he's ready. Boom. Muskie will eat anything that fit inside their mouth. Generally other fish, but they can eat frogs, birds, anything that falls into the water they can fit inside their mouth, even other muskie. But luckily we have them at a good size that they won't eat each other in here. Just chomping away, that one. Go ahead, got a question.
Yeah, Carolyn Hennessy asks, Bryant wants to know how many trout you have.
How many trout I have? I don't know. I have a lot. I want to say about 50. But I will probably be getting some more when we're allowed to kind of go up to the mountains and get some from Montebello. So some other inhabitants in this tank here you have down here. This is a red horse. Really sweet little guys, like a sucker. They eat off of the bottom different invertebrates and algae and stuff. And then you have this guy here, which is a quillback. Quillback look a lot like carp. They do the same thing. They kind of suck detritus and stuff off the bottom. They have that very distinct quilly dorsal fin, which is why they're called that. And then we also have some common carp in here, a walleye that you never see, and some various small shiners for the muskie to eat. Go ahead.
So Nasa Bryant asks, what are predators for muskies?
Just people. Yeah, there's not much that's going to eat a muskie. They get really large. Generally about 4 to even 5 feet long.
Connor M. would like to know how many different kinds of trout you have.
That's a great question, Connor. I have 3 types of trout. I have a rainbow trout, brook trout, which is our only state native trout, and then I have brown trout.
And we've got Debbie Smith asks, muskies look a little bit like gar. Are they similar?
Well, they're not really. I mean, they have a similar kind of habitat, but gar are what's referred to as an ancient fish, kind of like a living dinosaur, where they have remnant lungs and cartilaginous skeletons. But they do have that similar long body plan. But no, muskie are actually closely related to pikes and pickerels. They're the largest of those pike family. Gar are their own special thing. Alright, well if there's no other questions, I guess I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys for joining us at the Virginia Living Museum for Facebook Live sessions. Come back again this afternoon at 2:30. You'll be seeing myself feeding their flounder exhibit. So be sure to visit us virtually again on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and so forth. And we have updated information on our website, theVLM.org. And please consider adopting a wild thing or even contributing to our emergency funds so we can keep caring for the animals here and they can be nice and healthy for when you guys are able to come back and visit us again this summer.